In the previous video, we looked into how to set loading conditions up in the main window by creating global filters. We created global filters for loading conditions and for the light ship. And these could be selected by the global filter drop list in the main window. In this video, we will look into how to create loading conditions in the hydrostatics window in ShipWeight to find hydrostatic values for our loading conditions. The first thing we do is to start the loading conditions window, which we will find on the view menu, and scrolling down on the view menu we will find the selections that's called load conditions, and opening up that will opening up the loading conditions view in ShipWeight. And the first thing and minimum thing we need to do here is to get hydrostatic tables into ShipWeight. To get the hydrostatic tables into ShipWeight, we push the button called Hydrostatics, and that brings up a dialog allowing us to type in hydrostatic table by typing in draft, displacement, km, LCB, which is longitudinal center of buoyancy, LCF, which is longitudinal center of flotation, moment to change trim, KB, and TPC value. The easiest way to do it is to get these values into spreadsheet from your stability software and simply just mark and copy the values from the spreadsheet and right click in ShipWeight and paste it into the table in ShipWeight. When the hydrostatics values are pasted in, you can close this dialog and we can now create the loading conditions. The loading conditions in this case are created in the upper area of this dialog, where each row will define one loading case, and then when selecting one row here, the lines in the lower area will be the definition of the particular loading condition in the upper area. So let's start by creating first the light ship. I select a new line in the upper area and I give in LW for light ship, and I can give in a description. Light ship. As always in ShipWeight, when you create a new row, go to the row below to make sure that this data have been properly input to the database. Then go back to the first row and start now to define the light ship in the line and the area below in this dialog. So to the definition of the light ship condition we do in this area, and since this is the light ship only, there's just one weight here, and that's the light ship. So again, I give in a load ID of LW and I call it light ship, and I use the tab key to go to the type, and this number we'll get from the weight group of ShipWeight. So I click weight group and then I go to this source column, and I'm going to use the light ship as my source. So I'm referring to the weight group light ship in the main window, referring to this group over here, by saying that my loading condition will be defined by the light ship weight group in ShipWeight. Then I right click and I select update items, and now it brings in the numbers of the weight and CG for the light ship group in ShipWeight and updates this loading condition, and now calculates the hydrostatics for the loading conditions. let's do another loading condition, which now can be the capacity load, for example. Then I go to the upper area, I select a new line and give in a new load case ID, for example CA for capacity load. I go to the line below to enter it and go back up to select it. And also here we will also now start by getting the light ship from ShipWeight hierarchy, and that will be the weight group LW. And then in addition we want to have the C loads from ShipWeight, and again we will select the weight group, and the source in this case will be C for C loads. Again we select these lines, right click and say update items to grab the numbers and center of gravity from ShipWeight and create a new loading conditions, and now we have the hydrostatic values for this condition calculated in the right area here. Let's make a third one. We can also make a full load, and the full load condition I will note LWFL, and the reason I use that particular ID for the load case is that I know that in my RP12 report it's going to, in the full load hydrostatic report sheet, it will look for this particular ID to catch the hydrostatic values to include in the RP12 report. Similar thing here, I create light ship that I get from ShipWeight, and now I get the F loads. Now be aware that the links that we create to ShipWeight, they are not live, so we need to select these items and update them manually every time we need to do an update of any of these loading conditions if the weights have changed in ShipWeight. So now we created 3 loading cases and we have the hydrostatics calculated for all 3 of them. All of these have only 1 or 2 lines here, but you can of course have any number of lines for the definition of the condition itself. Now we will look into a couple of other ways of creating loading conditions beyond just referencing weight groups in the main hierarchy. So let's make one that we call ballast condition. So ballast condition. And in this case, we will not refer to any load groups. We will start by referring to the light ship weight in ShipWeight. The light ship. But now instead of creating another reference to a ShipWeight weight group, I'm going to create a reference to a tank and a tank load. And so if I have a tank 1 here, for example, can do tank 1, and I can then type in the weight of this tank and the VCG and LCG and TCG condition. And I'm going to make this a load. So now it doesn't have a source because this is just a point load. So I'm defining two tanks here as with point loads. It doesn't need to be tanks, it can be anything, of course. So this is how you can define point loads directly in the grids here without making any reference at all to ShipWeight load groups. We'll update the items, and now we have hydrostatics for this loading condition. The last loading condition that will be shown is a loading condition that allows you to refer tanks that have specific contents and sounding, and then we will fill up that tanks by using sounding tables. To be able to do that, in addition to add the hydrostatics table, you also need to add tanks table. So if I click on the tank button here, you will see that I have pre-filled in a list of tanks that's been entered in with their tank ID, description, a density, a volume, and a tank type. And also, if I select one tank here, you will see that for this tank I've also pasted in the sounding table, which allow me to fill the tank for a certain percentage. So let's see how that works if I now create a arrival condition, for example. So I create the arrival condition, and typically I also now start with a light ship. But now, instead of doing a weight group reference or a point load, I'm going to reference one of my tank in my tank table. This is my 4-peak tank. And then in the type column here, I'm not selecting weight group or load, but I'm selecting tank. And then in the source column, I refer to the tank in my tank list. So now this line here is connected to the tank in my tank list, which is here, which again is connected to its sounding table. So now I can just right-click this line and select fill tank, and for example say I want to fill it 50%. So I put in 50% and I click OK, and then ShipWeight looks up in the sounding table for this tank and gives me the correct center of gravity and weight for a 50% full 4-peak tank. Finally, I select these rows again and right click and update items to update my arrival conditions here, and now I can read the hydrostatics. If you have some other special cases, for example tanks with free surface moments, values for the free surface moments can be given indirectly either in the grid here or it may be defined in the sounding table. If it's defined in the sounding table, free surface moment in the X and Y direction will be automatically filled in. If not, you can fill it in directly here, or a complete one for the whole loading condition up here just by typing it in directly in the columns here for SMX and SMY. So as you can see now, the GM correction for free surface moments is 0, but if we type in something for the loading condition here, give in some numbers, you will see that we now get the free surface correction for the GM value based upon the free surface moments that's been inserted for this loading condition. Finally, one very important note. This is taking basis in the fact that the origin is in AP, baseline and centerline for the calculations. If you are doing a project where origin is in FP and positive axis going from FP towards AP, to get correct hydrostatic values calculated, it is very important that you, in the project info of the ShipWeight project, put the LPP value, in this case 80 meters, in the LCG of the origin here, and then shift the coordinate direction from 1 to -1. If you do an FP equals 0 and positive from FP to AP, make sure to do this setting in the project information to have the hydrostatics correctly calculated. If not, drafts and fore and aft and trim will be wrong.